First time speaking in the north, first time at a comedy club. Welcome to the Embassy Club. I feel I should be talking about, dads dancing at weddings or things we haven't got anymore. Space operas, remember space operas? Spangles. Instead, we are talking about user experience, UX, which has its roots, as we know, human factors, ergonomics, usability, and psychology, which we'll hear more about today. I'm going to talk about my own story and my own take on product design rooted in psychological responses, if you like, and more specifically how I rediscovered my love of branding, something that boomed in the era of the Mad Men, but is relevant, I think, very relevant to the UX-centric, lean startup product marketplace that we live in today. Last year in London, I took a job at this company, Huddle. It was the first real job I had in about 10 years, and the first job I've ever had with UX in the title. If you haven't heard of Huddle, I'll forgive you. I hadn't heard of it either. But it is cloud collaboration software designed for big businesses to work together. Founded by these guys, Ali and Andy, looking impossibly young in this photo, much grayer hair now, but actually much better teeth, which says a lot for VC funding. In a former life, they were consultants who had to work with Microsoft SharePoint. Ugh. And as often goes with these stories, they hated SharePoint and they thought that they could do one better. So I had a look around the app. Some things were pretty good, some things were not so good. The whole interface was looking a little bit aging. And I started to realize what the CTO meant when he talked about wanting to make the UX better. You know that, the UX, right? The sprinkles on top. But we don't want to do that, do we, UX people? We want to dig into the foundations and understand the problem and generally upset the apple cart. And that's what I started to do. And I started to wonder, well, what would a better user experience mean? And for who? Huddle has got a lot of disparate buyers, people in enterprise, people in agencies, people in government departments. And something that curses all of us who've worked in B2B is that the people who buy the software aren't the people who use it. And that diffusion, if you like, and that kind of confused marketplace, it can lead to this culture of appeasing customers. And that in turn leads to feature bloat, doing more and more stuff, making the product bigger and bigger. But competing on this growing list of features is kind of like an arms race, really, and Huddle's competitors all have more firepower. The risk was that this product that was founded as a challenger to SharePoint, a product which itself is so hideously complex and bloated that it's created this kind of aftermarket of consultants who use it so you don't have to. The Huddle would end up going down the same road. Eventually, you have to ask yourself how much is enough. Now, we see this idea expressed again and again, but it remains a problem. There's this sort of happiness curve that we all go on. At the start, there's a new tool, and it addresses an unmet need that we have, and we get into it, say, this is pretty good, like it, wish it did a bit more. So need begets new need. And so competitors come along and new versions come along and the space starts to hot up. Now we've got Dropbox integration, now Facebook integration, now social features. And it's pretty cool for a while. And it's more than that, it's empowering. A well-designed product turns its user into a superhero. And so eventually we reach this peak of happiness. But the product doesn't stop there, does it? It keeps evolving. Maybe it's trying to lock us into annual updates. Maybe it's adding a bunch of crappy image slicing tools that we'd never use and ignoring the long-standing text rendering bugs. Thanks, Photoshop. And on we go, hunting out the things that we used to know where they were amid the incomprehensible navigation ribbon or whatever. I hear this phrase a lot in user test sessions. Now I can't even do the one simple thing that I bought this for. As fully featured as we make our products, there's usually this kind of Buddha essence. A basic proposition around which we build our experience. And once we lose sight of that essence, that one thing that we should be focusing on, the software sucks. Or worse still, our users blame themselves for not being smart enough. Now, I can understand why companies, particularly technology companies, like features. Features are easier to get hold of, right? Sometimes even for consumers, features are a kind of ready currency for competing products. As some of these comments show, for a product that was hotly anticipated in 2001. Anyone guess what this was? Yeah. On paper, the iPod and latterly the iPhone had some unusual omissions in their feature set. iPod had relatively small storage and didn't support many audio formats. First iPhone didn't have 3G. Yet these products show us that focusing on features alone and not the overall experience doesn't really tell the whole story. 350 million iPods later, however. Scarily enough, products are racing along this maturity curve faster than ever. Took radio 38 years to get to 50 million users. TV did it in 13 years. Facebook did it in just under 4 years. YouTube in 6 months. And Angry Birds in 50 days. So I talked to the developers at Huddle about features, and they told me of this regularly shifting focus. Customers who have these very mixed views about who Huddle competes for. Talked to somebody this morning and said, oh, it's that project management tool, isn't it? Yeah, kinda. Or instant messaging. Because they think we're a bit like Basecamp or a bit like Yammer. And it's not really surprising because the product had become bloated with these features that suggested that it was headed in one of those directions. So, for my sins, I went to marketing. And I turned to them for guidance. And I asked about our brand. And they said, oh, you know, it's blue, and this is the Pantone reference, and here's the logo guidelines. And I knew then how I'd attack the problem, you see, because this is not a brand. Just as we know that UX is not the sprinkles on top, branding is not about making the logo bigger. Brands don't exist in marketing guidelines, but here, lodged in the dark corners, actually the emotional centers of our brains. Psychology tie-in, you see. Thanks. A brand is a small idea that occupies a corner of our mind. It's the mental association we make then when we're thinking about a product or a service. Let's try this out. If I ask you who made safe cars, you would say, thank you very much. Name me a robot vacuum cleaner. Got it from over there? Roomba. Thank you very much. We're warming up the room. My mother-in-law. One for the pre-digital kids in the crowd. Instant camera. Thank you. Neat trick, this mass hypnosis, isn't it? And it shows these category-specific values, safety in cars and robots in vacuuming and in instant in photography, have been hardwired in our brains to a particular brand. So therefore, by design, brand is very simple. It's got to be, because we haven't got room for a complex message in the corner of our mind. It's instinctive word association, and effective branding therefore means focus, making it clear to customers what it is that you do, and more importantly, what's different about you. We respond to brand propositions like relationship propositions, similar mental processes at work. So as brand owners, it's a little bit like putting ourselves out there and trying to form a relationship with people, you know. And people ask questions of us. They say, who are you? They want to have that basic identification and association with a particular product or service category. Can they pick us out of a lineup? Do they know what we're offering? And then it goes to, what are you? What qualities are you offering me? More so than what do you do, but actually what are you really about? What do you stand for? And from there, what do I think about that? Is the fact that you're secure and reliable and intelligent interesting? Or maybe no. Maybe I prefer edgy and cheeky and somebody with more hair or something. Whatever. I'm getting sidetracked. And finally, what about you and me? What gaps do I have that you can fill? Such are the building blocks, the ladder, if you will, of brand building, relationship building. It's as much emotional as it is rational. And it isn't just feel-good stuff. It drives the economic growth of a business. Consider, if you will, the humble coffee bean. A commodity, if ever there was one. But grind the bean into a cup, and you've got a cup of coffee, you've got a product that you can sell. Sell it in a coffee shop, and you're offering a service. Put some comfy chairs and some smooth jazz in that coffee shop, and you're creating an experience. Get people to come back every day and build loyalty, and you've driven a behavioral transformation. Preference, long-term loyalty. Create the customer, and the money will follow. So what Huddle really needed to do was not to go bigger and bigger and have more features, but to actually get a small idea that resonated with our customers. And that's what brand is. It's the idea that we offer, the values that drive it, and the personality by which those values are expressed. Values are the things that you believe in, the things that you care about, ideally the things that you're best at. It's the impetus that drives many founders to start a product company in the first place, just as Ali and Andy's stance against bad business software led them to start Huddle. Values are the things that you love, or the things that you hate, and they serve as a guiding policy driving everything that you do. Values need to be meaningful, and therefore have desirable opposites. It's no use saying that you're about integrity or honesty or that you're, customer-centered, because who wouldn't say that? Dove, as you might remember this campaign, took a stand against the accepted values of glamour by challenging our notions of real beauty. Volvo have long talked about their commitment to safety, and Starbucks likes to think it's all ethical. And it raises an interesting point, because values need to come from within and needs to be lived every day. People will notice if you fail. Of course, we all remember Starbucks and their tax-paying adventures. And now, while they didn't do anything illegal, really, but somehow we felt it was immoral. It wasn't. They let us down. Their brand reputation was tarnished because we had expectations of their values that they failed to live up to. So values drive your brand purpose, your mission, if you will, the visible change that you want to see in the world. And there have been some great ones. Microsoft started out with a fantastic mission to put a computer on every desk and in every home. Now, however uncool you might think Microsoft is these days, they did bloody do that. So ask yourself, what are we for? And how will we know when we're done? It's a kind of storytelling. It's a story of where you came from and where you want to go. These stories energize and focus the team around a core mission. There's a great story about the time that JFK was visiting the NASA building in the 60s. And he walked up to, early 60s, I guess. He walked up to a janitor and he said, so what do you do here? Thank you again. And the janitor puts down his mop and he stands up straight and he says, Mr. President, I'm helping put a man on the moon. So maybe it's part of your company folklore. Maybe it's never been written down. Maybe if you're a startup, maybe the early chapters of your story are still being written. But we know that stories are powerful. And if you can write it down, if you can make it a compelling narrative, you can use it to get the team members aligned. And get customers to believe in your mission. Tell people how and why you got started, what your offering is, and how you want to change the world. And you'll get them on side, and they'll want to help you get there. So if values are what you say, then personality is how you say it. Are you a little bit cheeky, a little bit, you know, a little bit way? Or are you, I didn't write that bit down, or are you all buttoned up? You know, are you informal? Do you speak like a peer or like a parent? Personality is a great driver in creating memorable experience design, both in the content that we serve up and in the interfaces for getting it. Now, it used to be, once upon a time, that personality from products came largely from how they were advertised. When the VW Beetle first launched in the US, no one really quite knew what to make of this funny-looking doodle bug from then very recently post-war Germany. And one could argue that the personality that we now attribute to the product itself, to the Beetle itself, stemmed from these iconic long copy ads that express Volkswagen's very straightforward, playful, irreverent tone. Contrast that with this one from David Ogilvy. Born from the pages of an engineering report stating that at 60 miles an hour, the loudest sounds from inside the Rolls-Royce come from the ticking of the clock. Very elegant and authentically true idea with a quiet confidence and a charm that exudes the very different Rolls-Royce personality. With the digital products that we design, we can make that tone integral to the experience. The characterful way that we write our microcopy or present information speaks very much to our brand personality. The interface, whether it's made of words or affordances, it kind of is the brand. So we need to be careful how we do it. Our brand voice has three major needs. It should be talkable, by which we mean relevant to our sector and to our audience, so that they want to talk about it to their friends. It needs to be authentic, as I say, stemming from our values and our mission. We can all spot, can't we, when big brands try to talk in a voice that isn't their own. And above all, it needs to be unique, instantly identifiable with our brand and with nobody else's. MailChimp do this really well, don't they? Tone of voice is writ large in this product. Playful and informal, and it never breaks character. Freddie speaks to the user to guide them through what might be an otherwise cumbersome process, like measuring how wide your email should be so that it doesn't break in different email clients. If you pull it too wide, oh dear, we don't like that. MailChimp's got this whole manual that documents exactly how mascot Freddie von Chimpenheimer IV should and shouldn't talk. And it guides the service design of the product. Innocent drinks, we all know. They first got successful about 10 years ago with their all-natural smoothies. But as we can relate, what they really got famous for was this kind of copy, this funny, irreverent tone that they put onto their packaging. It really played to the idea of innocent being different and non-corporate and, well, innocent. But its success was, in some ways, its undoing. It led to many others trying this informal, over-friendly tone of voice. And when everyone's doing it, well, it all gets a bit much. It got this name, wackaging, short for wacky packaging. And now it's bloody everywhere, isn't it? It's co-opted by banks and utilities and other companies far from innocent. For them, it fails the test. We doubt its authenticity, and it's certainly not unique. I mean, do we really want the bill from our water company speaking to us in this overly chatted tone before we've even opened the envelope? Which brings me on to this kind of web design, which I think is starting to suffer from the same problem. Everything's lovely and simple and happy in these worlds, and the sky is blue, and the mascots are always cute, aren't they? It's also bloody nice. But if these brands are all speaking in the same happy-go-lucky tone of voice, we might buy their authenticity, but again, they're failing to be unique. It's a problem that seems to be affecting visual design too. Not too many years ago, I can remember everything had all that Web 2.0 look with the glossy candy-colored buttons and all of that. And now designers, you know, with their youth and their top button done up and their hope, they debate skeuomorphism versus flat designers as those are the only two fucking choices available. Picking a tribe is the opposite of being a designer. Personality is expressed through visuals too, and this dribblification of visual design really hurts our distinctiveness. Authentic, yes-ish. Talkable, not so much. Unique, certainly not. Look at this, you can use our app while drinking coffee and using a wooden table. Or in a coffee shop with a wooden table and an old camera that shows how kitschy, cool, lo-fi we are. Or in a coffee shop with a wooden table with every device we own scattered about. And we can call our company Oof, for the love of God. I will stop ranting because personality is great. And for first movers, a strong personality can make them stand out from the competition. But eventually, having personality alone isn't enough to make a difference. So find a voice that's truly yours. We're very good at spotting fakes. We hate it when these corporate brands try to pretend that they're small and artisanal. And we're getting weary of the wackaging. So be honest, be authentic, be appropriate. In 1981, these guys with their fancy suits, Al Reese and Jack Trout, wrote this book called Positioning, marketing classic. It talks about knowing the product category that you're in and how to build a presence there. We learn that it's always better to be first in a category. After all, who remembers the second man on the moon? And that each category typically has a leader and a challenger. Think Coke and Pepsi. The challenger's role is to disrupt the status quo, make people think about the category in new ways and turn any weaknesses that they have into strengths. Perhaps the most famous example of this was car rental, dominated in the 50s by Hertz, with delightfully PC ads like this one. The challenger brand was Avis, who made advertising history with this campaign, saying, "We're number 2. So we try harder. We're number 2, so the lines are shorter at our desk." Which is brilliant, right? And completely true, or completely authentic. And by making a virtue out of trying harder, by reframing their underdog position as being trustworthy and earnest, they subtly reposition Hertz as being lazy and complacent. So the challenger reframes the conversation, changes our perception in their favor. And reframing can actually create whole new subcategories of which your brand can then be first. This was American car advertising in the 50s. Big and opulent and luxurious. Man's got to have a big Cadillac. Big meant status, right? And then came this little thing. Making a virtue out of small. Small's cheaper to run. It's cheaper to fix. It's easier to park. Very bold move at the time, but it paid off and it ushered in a whole new category of small cars. In 2007, Steve Ballmer, God rest his soul, missed the point of the iPhone. He thought that no one would want a $500 phone, and actually when you say it like that, it sounds about right, doesn't it? But a lot of people wanted a $500 pocket computer, which is, as it turns out, is what the iPhone really was. Because Apple knew a lot about reframing. And back in the 80s, they had suggested that IBM were like Big Brother, and that big box computer owners were like their drones. With the Macintosh, Apple created the category of the personal computer. Not just one you could personally own, but one with its own personality. This guy is actually fronting an ad campaign at the moment. Do you know who he is? Dick Fosbury, right? In the 1968 Olympics, he took the gold medal for the high jump, using this technique, going over backwards, head first. He was the first person to do it. And the technique became known as the Fosbury flop, and now everybody does it that way. So true challengers attack the status quo of the category, reframe them to their advantage, and in doing so often create a new category. Personal stereos or luxury ice cream or light beer. And when it comes to personality, challengers don't have to resort to trash-talking competitors, but they can take the higher ground by saying, look, we're attacking the problem in a genuinely different way. This is an ad for Naugahyde, the vinyl fabric, or pleather. Its original advertising campaign talked about how it was durable, easy to keep clean, cheaper than leather. 90s, 60s buyers were like, nah. But we can see the moment when the old world advertising gave way to the madmen. Boom. They went to Bill Bernbach, and he came back with this marvel. I can only imagine the meeting. He reframed vinyl as cruelty-free fabric. It was amazing, right, in the 60s. And created the character of the Norga, from whose hide we get Naugahyde. See, no animals were harmed in the making of this ad because the Norga shed their skin voluntarily without harm to themselves. Convenient, huh? And so the Norga story uses character effectively to extol the reframed differentiator of the product. So tone of voice is not just about personality, but it's about positioning. It's about focusing on a single word, single idea, a single differentiated category-owning idea, no less, that will lodge itself firmly in the mind of the customer. Back to Huddle. So I ran this workshop, talked about branding, said, brand, this is what it is. This is our management team. Aren't they nice? And I ran a workshop to try and tease out agreement about our mission and our values and our personality. And one of the things that I wanted to nail was this appropriate tone of voice. And we got a whole thing going. You know, through some exercises, it started to take some shape. We'd be witty but never zany. We'd be geeky but never niche. Feminine but never girly. Well, not groundbreaking perhaps, but it was something to work with. And in the world of B2B enterprise software, something to really underpin Huddle's uniquely British heritage. We did celebrity exercises too, you know, expressing our personality through celebrities and existing brands. We were a little bit Hugh Laurie, a little bit David Tennant, a little bit new Minnie. As I like to say, resonant to the British, but relevant to the world. Even did this thing, look at this, tone of voice statement. Articulated how we should always sound, that's something that spoke directly to the workers in the trenches who'd had this software forced upon them. Something that says, we feel your pain, we know your shitty job is tough, but let's at least make our time together a little bit more pleasant. Too much to hope for? Maybe. Even this. I really went to town on this stuff. A series of specific messaging examples which illustrate just how much voice you should be using across different circumstances. And we started to roll this stuff out across the app. Little bits of microcopy and email copy here and there that introduced this more formal, informal personality. A few weeks later, it came to pass that we had a big open day event. And we invited key customers to stand in front of our whole company and tell us what they thought of the product. And one customer was very keen to tell us about this new language he'd seen appearing. And he said, in my company, this went down like a cup of cold sick. And of course, all eyes turned to me. It was an embarrassing moment, but an important lesson. And what I came to realize is this kind of personality is what you can afford to buy with the goodwill that you have stored up. Personable copy might make a good product great, but it won't make a bad product good. Not that Huddle was bad, but it wasn't always the best tool for the job, as we talked about at the start. It brought me back to this, the UX hierarchy of needs, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, covering our basic needs and the things which make then something more desirable. Now these days, with our emotional interaction design and all the rest of it, we tend to focus around the top of this pyramid. focusing on the delighters, the emotion. But it really is a hierarchy. Unless you meet the basic needs first, nobody cares about the layers higher up. You want hot water in your hotel room before you care about a chocolate on the pillow. So you can't always fix the problem with a superficial layer of personality. It's about voice and tone. You'd adapt your tone to the situation, much as you wouldn't crack a joke at a funeral. So before layering on the personality, you've got to ask yourself, does my product remind people of death? So once again, brand, differentiated idea that you own in the mind of the customer, driven by authentic values and told through personality. Huddle was not the first collaboration tool, but maybe it could be the first intelligent collaboration tool. Anything else is just file storage. And that led me on to this idea of brand-driven design, taking that brand story, those values, that differentiated idea, and putting it all into the heart of the product experience. I'm surprised that more products don't really do this. Perhaps they need to understand just what their differentiator really is. If we want to challenge a category leader and be remembered, we can't just give people more of the same. So yeah, Huddle should absolutely make their intelligence features front and center of their product design if that's the differentiator they want to go for. Twitter was not the first blogging platform, but popularized a new category of microblogging. That 140 character hard limit makes the differentiator clear. It's the thing that makes Twitter Twitter. ITV News, great success by stripping down their news stories to their essence, designed for this kind of short snacking, and a stream model. I mean, you might think ITV, ugh, right? Ugh, Somalia of television, horrible. But by taking this different tack, they've gone from being a poor man's BBC News to something completely different, and their experience design really reflects that. Nest, not the first thermostat, but could lay claim to being the first truly intelligent thermostat. Very minimal design, no buttons on it, because you're not supposed to touch the thing because it's got this brain that's supposed to do it all for you. Kind of reminds me of another smart computer. But my favorite is Netflix, not the first video provider, not even the first streaming video provider. But Netflix's big differentiator is its recommended content. So confident are Netflix in their recommendations and their intelligent content categories that that's pretty much all they give you. It's much harder to browse around or search than to just take what you're given. And if they're doing their job right, then that should be fine, which I think is extraordinarily brave. And they're not afraid to have a bit of fun with it too. So, like we say, first law of branding is focus, staying true to that one idea. Focus means doing less, fewer features, less content. Our products and our apps should never be this infinitely large repository, and the more we add, the further we blur the clarity of that simple proposition that we need people to remember. It's not always easy, and Huddle is still on this journey, and sorry to say, I've now moved on, and I am available for children's parties and bar mitzvahs and stuff, but the challenge continues. See, when you work agile, everyone can hear you scream. Everyone can see and react to every change that you make, and that results in inconsistency across the app, from the bits that you've changed to the bits that you haven't got to yet. We weren't able to make the big sweeping changes all at once, like restructuring the IA or rewriting all the microcopy at once. And Huddle's customers, with their diffuse and contradictory understanding of what the software is for, was a problem too. We know that some features didn't deliver on the mission and should be axed, but it takes real bravery to cut those paying customers loose. And I won't pretend that this is a particularly user-centered approach, at least not user-appeasing. Rather than giving people what they want, brand is more about finding the people who are already naturally aligned to your principles. To forge ahead with differentiation, you need to get out of this cycle of short-term tactical customer appeasement and think strategically. So I'll leave you with some final thoughts. I know I'm running over, I'm sorry. The days of big multifunction products are I think, numbered, as consumers were favoring products that do one thing well, and using service layers to connect them, small focused pieces loosely joined across the network, which is great for branding, because it lets us create multiple distinct propositions that add value to one another without blurring that focus. Making marketing run your brand is like making IT run your website. No disrespect to marketers. It's just the understanding that living the brand and delivering on the values is something that unites and is the responsibility of everybody in the company. Don't compete with products on the features that they offer, but on what they stand for, how they're perceived and how they're solving the problem. What trick have they missed? Every truly disruptive product, from online-only insurance to lettuce in a bag, has come from taking an established status quo and turning it on its head. And remember, unique, authentic, and talkable, not just in brand personality, but in proposition. Find that uncontested ground where you have the chance to be the first mover. Which features, which content, what kind of relationship can only you offer? Focus only on what you do best. Brand isn't built overnight. That equity grows through the years. And this isn't just about telling people about your product, but it's about using the principles of branding to make better products, making better decisions for the roadmap, having greater insulation from competitors, and with users building long-term preference and loyalty and even love. Thank you very much.